My husband spent years secretly fathering his best friend's kids. I found out when their son started falling for our daughter. I want you to really sit with that for a second before I tell you the rest, because I need you to understand that I didn't find out the normal way. There was no late night text, no hotel receipt, no suspicious phone call. I found out because a teenage boy started looking at my daughter like she was the most important person in a room, and something about the way he looked at her made my whole body go cold. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to how any of this even became possible. My husband and his best friend, I'll call him Marcus, had been close since they were in school together. By the time I came into the picture, Marcus was just part of the package. He was at our wedding. He was at the hospital when our daughter was born. When Marcus got into a long-term relationship with a woman I'll call Dana, we all started doing everything together as two families. Dinners, holidays, weekend trips. For years. It was genuinely good. It felt like something real. Marcus and Dana had their first kid about 5 years into their relationship. Then a second one 2 years later. Then a third. The thing that I knew, but that I never let myself think about too carefully, was that Marcus had always been open about the fact that he wasn't sure he was the biological father of any of them. He and Dana had been going through a rough stretch when she got pregnant the first time, and she told him there was a chance someone else could be the father. Marcus decided he didn't care. He raised those kids like they were his regardless. I told myself that was beautiful, that it said something good about Marcus, and I moved on from the thought completely. But I watched my husband with those kids over the years, and there was always something I couldn't name. He'd teach the oldest to ride a bike with a patience I genuinely never seen from him before. He'd remember their specific preferences, the exact snacks they liked, the particular shows they watched. He went to their school events when Marcus couldn't make it. I told myself he was just being a good friend. Some men are great with kids. That's allowed to just be true. What I couldn't explain away as easily was how much those kids looked like him, especially the oldest. He had my husband's exact jaw, my husband's exact eyes, my husband's way of tilting his head when he was thinking. I'd catch myself staring sometimes and then feel immediately ashamed of the thought I was having. These were children. This was my husband's best friend's family. I was not going to sit there and quietly accuse my husband of something monstrous with zero proof. So I didn't. Not for years. The kids grew up. Our daughter grew up. And somewhere around the time the oldest of Marcus and Dana's kids turned 17, he started coming around more on his own without his parents. He'd show up for reasons that were vague, reasons that dissolved quickly into him and my daughter just hanging out. I told myself they were friends. Teenagers are friends. That's fine. Then one night I came home to find them sitting together on the couch, close in a way that wasn't just friendship, and the way he looked at her when she laughed at something. That's when it hit me. Not gradually. All at once, like a door slamming shut. Because he looked exactly like my husband when he did it. I'm not going to describe what the next few hours felt like. I don't think I have words for it. What I will tell you is that I didn't say anything that night. I kept it together, I stayed calm, and after he went home, I sat in the kitchen alone for a long time and thought about every single thing I'd told myself wasn't worth worrying about over the past decade and a half. The next morning, I started paying attention in a way I never had before. I looked back at photos, I thought about specific moments I dismissed. I thought about the trip the four of us took when the youngest was just a baby, when my husband and Dana had gone off for a walk together for almost 2 hours and came back quiet and strange. I thought about a night years before that when Marcus called our house upset about something Dana had said, and my husband had gotten off the phone and told me it was fine, it was nothing, they'd work it out. I thought about how my husband had never once, in all the years I'd known Marcus, ever seemed even slightly jealous of him, how he'd never had a moment of competitive energy or friction with him, how the friendship had always felt more like an obligation than a joy, and I'd never understood why he maintained it so consistently if they weren't that close in spirit. And then I understood why. I went to my husband and I told him what I'd been thinking. I didn't make accusations. I just laid out what I'd noticed and I told him I needed him to tell me the truth. He didn't deny it. He didn't explain it either. He sat there for a moment and then he stood up, went to the bedroom and started packing a bag. I asked him what he was doing and he said he needed some air. I said, okay. He said he'd be in touch. And then he left and drove to Dana's, to his mistress's house, which is also his best friend's house, where his best friend still lived with the 3 children my husband had apparently fathered over the course of a decade-long affair. I don't know what Marcus knew or didn't know at that point, and I genuinely still don't. What I know is that within 48 hours of my husband leaving, Dana reached out to me directly. She told me I needed to delete every piece of proof I had of the affair, or I was going to regret it. She said it exactly like that. She told me I was going to regret it. I want to be very clear about something. I've spent years being the one who looked the other way because looking felt too dangerous. I've spent years being the reasonable one, the calm one, the one who told myself I was probably wrong. I'm not doing that anymore. I told her I'd think about it. I haven't deleted anything. What I have done is talk to a lawyer. I've made copies of everything and put them somewhere she can't reach. I've started the process of separating from my husband, and I've made sure that the people in my life who matter most know the truth, not as a weapon, just so I don't have to carry it alone anymore. As for my daughter, I told her. Not everything. Not the version with all the details, but enough. I told her that the situation with this boy was more complicated than either of them knew and that they needed to stop seeing each other. She was hurt and confused. I told her I'd explain more when the time was right. I'm working on figuring out what that even looks like. There are still so many things I don't have answers to. I don't know what those kids know. I don't know if Marcus is going to eventually find out the full picture or if he already suspects it. I don't know if my husband is going to stay with Dana or eventually try to come back. I don't know what the right thing to do for those kids even is, because at the end of the day, they're just kids, and none of this is their fault. What I know is that I spent 15 years sharing a life with someone who was living an entirely different one 3 miles away. And the only reason I found out is because his secret almost became my daughter's problem too. I don't know what you would have done in my position. At what point does your gut tell you something is wrong? And how long do you let yourself pretend it's not?